Welcome to the Changing the Conversation Q&A series. This series consists of 4 parts, each of which expands briefly on the questions raised during the Changing the Conversation webinar series. 4 webinars providing invaluable insights to framing, hot topics related to implicit bias towards aging, and tools from the National Center and our partners. Before we begin, we would like to introduce the National Center to Reframe Aging, the trusted source for proven communication strategies and tools to effectively frame aging issues. The National Center is dedicated to ending ageism by advancing an equitable and complete story about aging in America. We are the nation's leading organization cultivating an active community of individuals and organizations to spread awareness of implicit bias toward older people and influence policies and programs that benefit all of us as we age. With us today is Christina DaCosta and Maura O'Neill, presenters from the Age as a Point of Intersectionality portion of the webinar series. Thank you both for joining us today. During the webinar, you both shared such important information and insights into this topic, and I'd like to start by asking each of you to share one of your reflections or takeaways from the webinar. Christina, let's start with you.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. Nice to be here. Just looking back at the webinar, I wanted to share that what struck me and what continues to strike me in this conversation that we have on aging and ageism in this country and beyond, but more importantly, right here, right now, is that we need to communicate more, right? More communication, more education, and more recognition that aging is not a problem. It's not an issue. We are born and we start to age, and really trying to convey those narratives, those positive images of aging, and educating folks about this issue at all is humongous. And I am just really thrilled to be following up here and encourage folks to look back on the presentation and start to embody some of this work, whether it's in your professional life and your regular life. I consistently call out people when they complain about aging, and sometimes I get some flack for it, but really, if we don't take those small steps now, we're not doing ourselves any favors, or future generations coming up or current generations right now. It really needs to be a common practice. So that's just what the presentation laid home to me consistently again.
Maura.
Sure, and thank you for having me here. I think one of the biggest things that I reflected on after the webinar was, for those of you who haven't seen the webinar, who weren't there, Christina put up this amazing picture of one of her partners in a club twerking with Big Frida. And I had such a visceral response to that picture. And I realized that response was jealousy, because I am, and those of you know me, I don't tend to talk about myself this way. I'm a pretty good dancer, and I danced a lot in public spaces, and I don't have the opportunity to do that as I used to. And seeing that just made me want to be there. And so then later on in our conversation, we had a quote up of a couple saying how often that they go to dance and it makes them feel young at heart. And one of my responses was, this might be an indication of internalized ageism. And I said it, and then upon reflection, that I actually think it reflects a more insidious form of ageism. Is that, especially when I think about when I do get the opportunities to dance, which is usually weddings now, that I do feel young at heart, not because I want to go back. I actually wouldn't like to go back to my 20s, but I am systematically excluded from those spaces. They're not a space for someone of my age to regularly go and experience that. So I think that particular comment, I think it's less about internalized ageism and how we create spaces and intergenerational spaces to engage in all kinds of activities as we age. So that's one of the things that I wanted to reflect, or I was reflecting on and wanted to reflect on here.
Well, and Christina, I think continue with this idea that this is a movement, right? That these are pioneers. It's a long-term. We refer to our work as a long-term social change endeavor, right? And I think you mentioned during the webinar that this idea of breaking systemic cycles is a long-term goal. It's a long-term solution as we work to reduce the twin ageism effects that LGBTQ older adults face. And so I'm curious if you can talk to a couple of what are some short-term solutions that can be used to empower communities and reduce LGBTQ plus older people's vulnerability in aging contexts.
Yeah, so I think it, also goes back to something that Maura just said about spaces and inclusive spaces and making those spaces, truly available and inclusive to all people, right? And in particular with LGBTQ plus older folks, what SAGE has really advocated for is, we have a number of intergenerational programs that bring, folks from all ages, areas together. And those conversations are so powerful on both ends, right? It's, younger folks talking with older folks and really seeing how, the experiences of LGBTQ plus older people have led to where we are today, but also can still inspire and create hope given our current climate for the LGBTQ plus population. The other thing I would say is, in addition to intergenerational work and open spaces, are ensuring that even within, again, in the webinar, I described the twin intersections that LGBTQ plus older people face with, they have ageism on one side, and then they also have ageism on the LGBTQ plus cultural side, right? And so one thing that SAGE has really been advocating for that we've seen a lot of success in the past couple of years are age-friendly pride initiatives, right? If you think of pride, a pride march is not conducive to some folks who are older, right? It is hot. It is long. You are waiting on the hot streets for an hour or so before you even get to march. Where is the shade? Where is there a place to sit down? Are the bathrooms accessible? Is there transportation for folks to take part in? How do people get from the end of the parade to the back of the parade? All of these things that, SAGE has really worked across the country. We had an age-friendly pride initiative going on to kind of have people start to think about this when they have their prides, because you want everyone included. You want that history, you want that hope, you want that knowledge. But if you don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. And you're letting a whole population sit on the sidelines when they could be a part of the action.
Yeah, and I think really building on this idea of building inclusive spaces, what that looks like, how we do that. If you were speaking to an organization interested in starting an equity conversation within their organization, or someone in charge of writing communications about their organization's commitment to equity, what are some words of wisdom that you all would offer to that person, to that organization? And Maura, we can start with you.
I think it is the words of wisdom are just to be incredibly mindful and thoughtful and strategic, that every word that you choose matters, and really talking through what the implications of those words are going to be, getting outside readers to help you think about the implications of those words. It is just and when there are words that are not working, just like relentlessly editing, and paraphrasing, whatever it is you need to do. But it's just the mindfulness that really matters.
Christina, anything you'd like to add?
I mean, I would say there are resources out there, AKA the National Center for Reframing Aging is a very good place to start. And that intentionality is crucial, and having conversations across your organization, across your business is really important, again, to get the breadth of what exactly do you want to tackle? Why do you want to tackle? What is the intention of talking about ageism? And what does that look like within your own organization, right? That's something that Sage has really been committed to, I would say, in the past couple of years, ageism and ableism, and looking at what does that mean and how do we do better as an organization, not only in including the people we serve, right? But hiring practices and, talking about these issues internally, not just externally. So I think, again, it goes back to that being intentional, being mindful, and bringing a lot of people to the table who may not have had access, older people and younger people alike.
Absolutely. And one final question that I'd like to ask you both to reflect on and offer some reflections on is, what do you think is needed in the US specifically, in the US discourse and culture, for the public to internalize the idea that once we are born, we are all aging? And I'd ask in that if there are some things giving you hope that we're getting closer to that understanding.
I think what's giving me hope is the real fight, and you're seeing the results to stop using the word anti-aging on all kinds of things. Stop oh, you look so good for your age. Those compliments are being called out now. All of the just micro ways that we associate older age with negative attributes and things, and the way that we are making deliberate changes to our language to really stop that. We have so much farther to go, but there's just been incredible strides that have been made that gives me hope.
I'll echo all of that. I feel like I encountered the reframing work, I forget how many years ago when it first started, and thinking, wow, this is a heavy hill this is a big hill to walk up, right? And I do think that there has been, especially in recent years, this call out about ageism. We've seen it in the media, we've seen it in advertising. And, I think the more that, again, on a personal level, we can call these things out when we see them. And then on a systemic level, working with organizations who are making these changes, trying within our own organizations and businesses to talk about these issues, again, will help us climb, the large hill that we're all facing, right? Because aging is a blessing. I say this all the time to people, younger people, and I hear that from older people, where we are lucky to age, and especially those in the LGBTQ plus community who have faced so much harm. It's a blessing, and it's an amazing feat, and it should not be shunted aside just because of the way you look or the number of years you have. So I see hope, and let's make it better.
Absolutely. And it is a journey, and it's good to find those small wins along the way. And certainly our work and partnership with both of you and your organizations is part of our items that we celebrate along that journey. So thank you both for joining us and being a part of this Q&A series. For those watching, if you have not yet seen the Age as a Point of Intersectionality webinar featuring Christina and Maura, I encourage you to watch that webinar and you can access the link to the recording in the description below. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.